There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch, Michael by there.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, 27-year veteran of the NYPD. And with me tonight is the smorgasbord of police work. Below me is very sexy, retired NYPD Sergeant and Professor Michael Geary. How you doing tonight, Mike?
Good, Billy. Thank you.
You know, I was glad that you were ready at the last minute to come on the show, but I saw a little bit of, somewhat breaking news, not breaking news in the case, but breaking news on the social media end of it that sort of implied something, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And also with me tonight is straight out of Brooklyn, retired NYPD detective with a fresh new haircut from Giuseppe's Barbershop in Brooklyn, Phil Grimaldi. How you doing tonight, Phil?
I'm doing good, Billy, and you are a good detective. You spotted the haircut like that.
Well, all of our subscribers will look at that haircut and say, "Wow, Phil looks spiffy. Maybe I should take my hat off." But I didn't get a haircut. But
You got hat head, Bill. You got.
Yeah, I don't know why I was wearing a hat. I forgot to take it off. Anyway, I'll show that I still have some hair left. Anyway, guys, I was watching. I've been, of course, following every new thing, or what's old is new, and vice versa. And there's really nothing tremendously new, but the Chief Fry comes on most days and gives a little bit of an update. And you may construe what he said as that they're looking in a certain area, almost like that they have a suspect. And I don't believe they do. I don't believe they have a suspect. I'm not sure that they even totally have a direction toward a suspicious person in this case. There's been so much information. There's been so many things that we've heard about. Of course, the white Hyundai Elantra 2011 to 2013. But so far, no information coming back on that car. And no wonder there's 22,000 of them that they have to eliminate or check out. The other thing, it seems every day new video comes in. And one of the pieces of video that came out was from that corner bar. Here's up on the screen. You could see it, the Corner Club. And there was some video of Kaylee and Miss Mogan hanging out at that location prior to them going home, or prior to them going to the food truck. And it seems like, everyone that appears in a video all of a sudden becomes suspect numero uno, and that's America's Most Wanted. And it couldn't be more from the truth. I mean, we have to go, and police have to go with where the evidence leads. But everyone that sees anything on social media points fingers and says, "Look, that's the guy," and that's not how police work is done. And that's not how we separate who may be a good suspect from who may just be someone that you're interested in speaking with. Mike, thoughts?
Yeah, people want so badly to have a break in the case, leads in the case, solid leads in the case, that the video, I think, is put out there by the police to help jog people's memories, to say, look, well, here's a piece of video. Perhaps anyone may have seen them at the club. Could you just go over in your thoughts? Did anybody approach them? To jog people's memories and maybe in a way solicit a little bit more information. You never know what little bit of information may point them to a particular suspect or to a particular theory of the case that may be more accurate or maybe the best. So it's a good thing that they issue these little bits of videotape from outside the bars and things like that. And I think it's to jog people's memories. And I'm glad they're doing it it's necessary. You gotta keep people thinking about it and getting people to say, you know what? Oh, wait a minute. Oh yeah. Let me just call into the police or something. All you need is one person.
100%. Phil?
Bottom line is that tape was not released by the police, by the Moscow police. That was the local bar owner or someone affiliated with the bar put that tape out there. It hasn't even been verified that it's actually the victims in this case. But when you look at that video, now there's social media, there's podcasters, YouTube content creators, and again, making giant leaps and bounds on who the perpetrator is and pointing things out. And I would strongly advise against any kind of behavior where someone is named as possibly being involved in this thing, and then you go calling them or contacting them on social media and making threats. You could be held accountable with criminal charges. The police come out from Moscow. The chief of police said that any student that's threatened, they're going to take it seriously and they're going to pursue charges. So again, I would strongly advise against anyone making any leaps and bounds about who the perpetrator is and making threats or just contacting them or calling them out. You could really put yourself in a trick bag for criminal charges.
All right, let me play some of what Chief Fry had to say.
All that you believe could lead to an arrest?
Like I said, I can't discuss that. It's part of the investigation, but as soon as we can release that information, we will.
The Moscow Police Department releases some updates in the investigation. But what does it all mean? Retired NYPD Sergeant Joseph Giacalone breaks it down. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. We have some more updates for you right now in the University of Idaho murder investigation. I'm talking about the killings of 21-year-old Kaylee Gonsalves, 21-year-old Madison Mogan, 20-year-old Zana Kernodle, and 20-year-old Ethan Chapin, whose bodies were found in their off-campus home back on November 13th. Now, at the time of this recording, there have been no arrests, no publicly identifiable suspect, and no indication that the murder weapon has been recovered. But as I said, the Moscow Police Department has issued a press release with some updates. And to help me break down these updates, I want to bring in Joseph Giacalone, retired NYPD sergeant and author of the Criminal Investigative Function, 3rd edition. Joseph, thanks for coming here on Sidebar. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Jesse.
I'm going to go through some of these different points, and then I want your reaction to it and what this means. So the first 2 points are, let me rephrase, I'm not necessarily going in the order of which it's listed, but I think this is the way that I think we should structure it. So 2 points that they have in this press release are, number one, they say no suspect has been identified and only vetted information that does not hinder the investigation will be released to the public. We encourage referencing official releases for accurate and updated progress. All press releases and related information is available, and then they give their website. They go on to say that investigators believe someone has information that adds context to what occurred on the night of the murders and continue requesting additional pictures, video, and social media content. Our focus remains on the investigation, not on an individual's activities displayed in the tip. Whether you believe it is significant or not, your information might be one of the puzzle pieces that help solve these murders. And then it says digital submissions of tips and leads will not be publicly disclosed due to our ongoing commitment to keep information private, and details may be pertinent to the ongoing criminal investigation. My first question to you is, does that alarm you? Because doesn't it make it seem like they're not as advanced in the investigation as you would hope?
No, not yet. I mean, I am concerned how things are progressing. You have to understand something. The police department always holds back information. They don't provide things that will be detrimental to the case. And we have seen a large outpouring of information coming from the true crime community. And some of it has been just wrong and it's just been actually awful. So they have to try to kind of combat that. And if you a lot of things that they're saying in here, we're not saying in there, right? So there's a lot of what they were so they're trying to tell everybody, listen, we haven't come out with anything publicly yet. That doesn't mean that they don't have a suspect or suspects. But what it does tell everybody, it kind of puts them on notice that anything that comes out basically outside from the police department is you kind of not pay attention, because they're not running the investigation. The Moscow Police Department, the state, and the FBI are all involved in this, right? So the Moscow we know lead, because I don't see a federal here. right? Not yet. Right? We're not privy to everything. But here's the other thing when you look at this. There's an old motto that all investors, somebody knows, and that's probably universal throughout the entire United States. And the idea is to try to get those people who have maybe witnessed something that they thought was strange. This is a small community. This is, when you think of the grand scheme of things, small university, people coming and going. You have family members.
I'm going to have to, I want to stop it there just because I disagree with almost everything he's saying. I believe that if this came out in the first week or 2 weeks, I'd be all on board with it. But what I think it's really saying now is that they don't have a lot, and they maybe don't even have direction. And they're looking for that smoking gun piece of evidence that points them in the right direction. Don't forget, detectives get most of their information through interview and interrogation. And that is what the best detectives do. They're experts at interviewing and interrogating people. Therefore, they can include and exclude people rather quickly and with high levels of success and high levels of making the right decision of who to let go and who to still follow up on. Add to that forensic evidence. There is about a 99% chance that the DNA of the killer is in this crime scene. My prediction now, and I'm not a bettor, so I don't predict. I predict on things that are statistically can be proven. They have his DNA. They just don't have it identified. So the killer's DNA is in that crime scene and probably left blood in that scene. However, the killer's blood is not in the CODIS system. That's the combined DNA index system, which is run by the FBI, 2 types, offender and forensic. The DNA that was left in this crime scene has not been identified. So it's good and bad. It's good that the killer will be identified at some point. However, he's not identified right now. Tom Cusinelli, thank you so much for the $9.99 super chat. That's retired NYPD Captain Tom Cusinelli.
Good man.
Thank you very much for your support. So, guys, thoughts, Mike? Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I one of the things I saw immediately that struck me from after like the second week of the investigation was when the students all went home for the break, and that puts a real crimp on the old-fashioned detective work, going out there in an organizational manner, fanning out detectives and covering different dorms, different areas, different streets, things like that, people going through people in the neighborhood. And then the students, many of them did not come back. And I think what they're trying to do now is try to kind of jog people's memories, say, look, maybe you never came forward. Maybe you've gone home and you haven't come back. Please just give us a little bit of something to work with right now, because we're getting the DNA evidence, we're getting the fingerprint evidence, we're getting the phone evidence, but it's going to come down to probably old-fashioned police work. Somebody saying something to the police going back, as you guys say, spitballing, and then finding the scientific evidence to actually place that person that you think may be the prime suspect, placing them at the scene, at the time, at the location, on that date. So I think this is kind of it is disconcerting, but I think the hard part was in the beginning when everybody cut out for vacation and really kind of threw the old-fashioned part of police work, kind of threw everybody for a curve.
Mike, I don't want to get down on Joe Giacalone. I know him. I like the guy. He's one of us. He's retired NYPD. However, I disagree with him, and I'm going to say it. I disagree with that. I don't think this is a aha moment or a let's, spike the football moment. I think they're reaching out to the public because they really don't have that much right now. And I would love to believe that I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. I think that they're still reaching out. We want your tips. We want your video, because we don't have anything right now. Well, we have a hell of a lot of evidence in that crime scene, but we haven't connected the dots yet. Phil.
Billy, I got to agree with you on the fact that you said there's a very high probability that the perpetrator's DNA was left at the crime scene. It was probably already collected, recovered. However, I think at this point, we're so far in 6, 7 weeks in, if that perpetrator was in the CODA system or if they had a DNA matchup, the perpetrator would either be A, in custody, or B, plastered all over the media. So I think that you're right about that. I think it's a very high probability his evidence, whether it be fingerprint, DNA, blood, saliva, hair, some type of evidence is going to be left at that scene. You don't encounter 4 individuals, stab them to death, and not leave something behind. I think that's a gimme at that point. As far as this aha moment that everybody keeps talking about, it does seem like they're looking for more tips. Please keep calling in the tips. There's up to 15,000 tips already. That's a lot of work that has to be deciphered, whether it's, suitable for further investigation or if it's just nonsense. Again, might be the piece of the puzzle that we need might come in on the tip line. Absolutely. But again, do they have somebody in their sights? Do they have somebody on the radar screen? Possibly, but it doesn't seem like they could say we have a suspect at this point. I think we would have been at a different level at this point.
Absolutely. And I think that, we're hoping and praying that that DNA evidence will come back to something. But if it was going to come back to somebody, if it was identified, someone would be in handcuffs right now. That's my thoughts. But I think that that's not the case. I think that they're still working on a lot of the physical evidence that they've recovered. Let's go back to Joe Giacalone and see what else he says here.
Everybody, this is national and international, and what they're hoping is that somebody has spotted something that they thought was out of place. And the time was this really to come out with information like this was in the very beginning when this crime happened.
But when they say no suspect has been identified, does that mean publicly identified? That doesn't mean that they haven't found anybody. Because the way that I looked at it, if they had someone on their radar, I think based on what we've seen, they're not going to tell the public, right? They're not going to tell anybody yet until there's arrest. I'm reading that and saying they really have no idea who did this yet. We need more help. Maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way. Maybe they really do have some suspects, just they haven't publicly identify the suspects. How should I be reading that?
Well, yes, they're not going to, have, listen, I think you have suspects or people that they think are involved in this crime, whether it's an individual or individuals. I have a focus on specific people. And because of the DNA and all the different things that they've taken out of the house, I think that they would try to maybe key in on a couple of people. You got to remember, cell phone records, internet records. We saw video surveillance, which I refer to as the 3 forensic horsemen. Those 3 things, they're putting these pieces together. Now, the case is not moving as fast as the public wants, but that's not the way these cases work. You have a quadruple homicide. This is something that is very time consuming. And the problem that you run into is with the DNA is that there might be multiple donors in a house of this kind of situation where it's a college campus, and they're going to have to cull through a lot of these things. So they believe that they have people that they were looking in, right? So they might need a DNA exemplar. They might need to be able to eliminate people. They're not going to keep, they're going to keep the public and specifically the perpetrator guessing, right? This is checkers where the police move and the person moves. You have to play chess, right? You're thinking 3 moves ahead. And in some investigations, you have to play poker where you have to bluff people. The lack of a specific target or anything like that, or even hinting at it, I think would be really bad idea, especially the way the true crime community, some in the true crime community has been really looking into these cases and coming up with their own, wild theories. And
look, the true crime community does not decide the investigative direction. The police do. And Giacalone mentioned, cell phone evidence. We mentioned geofencing, which we are surprised they haven't identified anything yet. And that's where they can pull up all electronic devices being used in a specific area in a specific time. We haven't heard anything about that. So obviously that has yet to be successful. Many of you in the chat have mentioned, well, that house was a genetic DNA nightmare because so many people were in that house and people left DNA. What I'm referring to, and there's a very high percentage chance, is that the killer cut himself and left his blood. That's the DNA I'm speaking about. So it would be blood that would be unidentified DNA from blood. And that's the DNA that we're hoping they can identify. And again, it could be that DNA, they have a sample of it, but it's not in CODIS. So they haven't been able to identify it. Barbara Stam, thank you for the $5 super sticker. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime stories from a police perspective, then this is the place to be. And if you're not subscribed to us, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, give us a thumbs up. It's free. It's free to subscribe on our YouTube. If you want to support us, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels. And we also have a YouTube channel members. And you can see the folks in the green font. They're part of our YouTube membership and they support us. And we really appreciate our fans, our subscribers, and our friends. So not to...
Well, can I make a point about the geofencing?
Yeah, let me just finish.
Go ahead.
I don't, I'm not totally buying what Jackalone is saying. I just think that they're still putting this case together. And it's a difficult case, a quadruple murder. There's nothing obvious about this case. And everyone thought right away that the physical evidence would point to someone right away, and that me included. And guess what? It hasn't. Go ahead, Phil.
The thing I was going to talk about with the geofencing, that's going to come into, if they have the information back, there's probably thousands of records, but that's going to come into the interview and interrogation part of the investigation. What I mean by that is, let's say we get a tip. They name a person of interest. They say that this person didn't show up for work the day after this incident, came into work, had a bandage on a hand. So now we're going to go look. Before we go attack that person and try to do an interview of that person, we're going to go look and see if the cell phone record places that person. Now we're going to try and build some other stuff before we go interview them. Now, when we get them in the interview room, we get them in the box and we ask them, where were you? Specific things like that. Now we have ammunition. Well, guess what? You're saying you were over there, but guess what? Your cell phone places you right outside the location. Things like that will be the tools that interview and interrogators will use when they get a person that they think is a strong suspect in this case.
100%. Lee Perry, thank you so much for the $9.99 super sticker. Very much appreciated. Thank you for your support. You know, folks, this is a painstaking investigation. And of course, we and the press and the public, especially the people that live in Moscow, Idaho, they want results because there is a killer out there in their community. So you can imagine how frustrated and how on edge the Moscow community is. Mike.
Yeah, I think one of the difficulties, grave difficulties that the public doesn't understand is that if you have one body, you could do a victimology study of that person and perhaps come up with a single person, maybe 2 suspects who may have some sort of motivation to kill that person. With 4 suspects, we always thought at the very beginning that Ms. Gonsalves was the target and the other 3 may have been, you'd want to say collateral damage, and that she was the intended target. So who would be so you'd look at the victimology of her and see who is possibly fixated on her. But with actually 4 people, you have to do 4, it's 4 times the work. It may not be that she was the intended target. It may have been Ms. Mogan or someone else there that may have been the intended target. So it really makes it difficult for the police because you have to do 4 times the amount of everything in this case compared to a case that they see on TV where there's a single person, that's been shot.
Exactly. Let's play a little more of Joe Jackalone and then we'll move on.
And kind of like some have actually interfered with it, right? We're seeing the release of videos and everything else, which is not good. And
I'm going to get to that in a second. Another aspect, murder weapon recovered. Having said that, is it possible the police department has recovered the murder weapon, but they just won't tell us?
No, I think they would tell us if they recovered the murder weapon, right? So the issue, unless they want to try to track down where it was possibly bought, there's a serial number on it, trace that down. we have federal agencies involved in this, right? So we have, the FBI working on this. We have access to databases and those kind of things where they could find out. So listen, finding the murder weapon is extremely important in this case, but will it identify the person who is responsible? Maybe. You got to remember, the person who bought it might not be the responsible person who actually committed these acts, right? It could have been somebody bought it, somebody stole it, somebody bought it in their home and somebody took it from their home, right? Unbeknownst to the owner. So these are to be taken into consideration.
You had mentioned something about, people online getting involved and that could be a distraction. Well, one of the other bullet points in this Moscow Police Department press release is they say, at the time in this investigation, detectives do not believe that the female associate professor and chair of the history department at the University of Idaho suing a TikTok user for defamation is involved in this crime. The Moscow Police Department will not provide a statement about the ongoing civil process. Now, to give everybody a little bit more context,
I don't want to really get into that. That's sort of like just basically, if you don't know the story, someone, a content creator on TikTok, pointed the finger at some University of Idaho female professor that said she's the killer. I mean, just the outrageous allegation. And then they were talking about, can that person be A, arrested for aggravated harassment, and B, sued civilly? Yes to both of those questions. Let's put that to bed, because I don't think it's that interesting that we need to concentrate on that. But what we are concentrating on is, one of the videos that was out there was one of the police going to the house. I believe it was September. And none of the people that lived in the house were there. It was like a big party being thrown at the house. And that's concerning. When you talk about, so anyone, it seemed, had access to that house. So that opens it up to like, well, then who's the suspect? Thousands of people, hundreds, let's say hundreds of people had been in and out of that house, and not just this semester, but semesters before that. So that is a bit concerning, don't you think?
Billy, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's one of, other than the car, the white Hyundai that they're talking about, that body-worn video shows a police officer going to the location. He engages a female at the front door, and he finds out from her, he gets the information that no one that lives in the location is there. However, you could hear that a noisy party is going on. I would want to identify every one of the people that was present in that home, and I want to know what happened after the police left. Was there some type of an argument where people that lived there came home and threw everybody out? Was there someone there that was acting irrational? Was there someone who was out of control, drunk? Was there some type of an altercation? I want to identify every person, interview them. I want to find out what happened, and that may lead you right to the killer. Again, with all those people being familiar with the layout of the home, that opens up a whole new pool of possible suspects.
Well, I was always interested in, and someone else said it in the chat, did they interview everyone in the fraternity that was Ethan's fraternity? And did they interview every single person in the sorority that all the girls belonged to? I would think that would be like a no-brainer. I don't know how many people that would entail. And we mentioned a million times, and I don't know. Look, none of us know this. I would have asked all of them for DNA samples, a DNA exemplar, and I would have asked them for major case fingerprints. Look, we all know they're college educated. They could say, no, I'm not giving it over. And that doesn't make them any more of a suspect. Mike, you're an attorney and you know that, but they have the right to turn the police down.
Sure. Yeah, the invocation of your constitutional rights under the 4th, 5th, or 6th Amendment can't be used by the police to heighten the awareness or the criminal suspicion. You can keep that in the back of your mind, absolutely, but you can't use that refusal as the basis of any further heightened awareness, say, for instance, to get an arrest warrant or a search warrant or something like that.
But, this also, that whole incident in September when people that didn't even live in that house were throwing a party at that house, that says a lot about that house. And it also says a lot to the police, like, wow, we have our work cut out for us now, because think if drinking and partying, what else was going on in that house? And it was a big house. So how many people could fit in that house at one time when they had a party? I mean, I've been to parties when I was in college. they'd squeeze 100 people into a house that that 3 people lived in. And I mean, we've all been to parties like that. So you can imagine a house like this that was a rather large house. They probably had squeezed hundreds of people in there.
And Bill, one other thing, just to piggyback on that, is the fact that this house may have had people in and out quite often. It may be that the person who killed these 4 people wasn't sure. Maybe they weren't looking for those particular people or one of those 4 people. Maybe they're looking for somebody else. Maybe that house was a very open house in terms of people, sleeping there for the weekend or considering it like a safe house.
Yeah, no, I think all those points are absolutely valid. Let me play a little bit of this here.
This morning, a new appeal for information to solve the November murder. 4 students from the University of Idaho Police Department put out a renewed call for social media content, pictures, and videos from the community, saying whether you believe it is significant or not, your information might be one of the puzzle pieces that helps solve these murders. Weeks after the deaths, with no word of a major break in the case, members of the community are on edge.
Everybody's doing the best they can under duress. It's really stressful, and we're just waiting, hopefully, every day to hear some good news.
The Moscow police also addressing the latest on that 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra spotted near the scene, saying they have identified over 22,000 vehicles and that whoever was inside may have critical information about the case. Mystery has surrounded the murders of roommates Madison Mogen and Zaina Kernodle, as well as his boyfriend Ethan Chapin, all stabbed to death inside a house. 2 roommates on the ground floor. Police say they're not suspects and likely slept through the attack. Police say they have combed through thousands of leads, but have not announced suspects or persons of interest. Cole Alternator lived in that home on King Road in Moscow during his junior year.
It's definitely an old, creaky house. You can't walk up any of the stairs or on any of the floors without everybody in the house knowing it.
The family's growing desperate for answers as they face the holidays without their loved ones. Madison Mogen's dad telling the Spokesman Review he remains hopeful. From the very beginning, I've known that people don't get away with these things these days. There's too many things that you can get caught up on, like DNA and videos everywhere. Kaylee Gonzalez's father, speaking with ABC, just after.
It's a shame, and everybody wants it to go away, and it needs to go away, but it can only go away when we have justice.
A feeling echoed by those living in Moscow, worried about a killer on the loose.
We need to find this person or persons.
So you can see that the community is definitely on edge with this. And, when it stretches into, I think this is week 7, right? It doesn't give a lot of confidence to the community. And I think that, we mentioned this before, that how you get the information out to community without sharing secrets is an art form in itself. Phil?
Obviously, you want to keep things very close to the vest, but there are things that have already been reported in the media by the police. They're talking about a specific weapon. This is not just an ordinary kitchen knife. This is not, somebody picked up a knife that was close by or just a pocket knife. They're talking about a very large hunting knife. That led me to come to the conclusion that I believe the perpetrator is going to have some hunting background, maybe familiar with gutting animals. And I also believe to slaughter 4 people. I was on Banfield last night, and I commented about this last night. A person that's 120 pounds soaking wet is not going to be the perpetrator. They slaughtered 4 people. It's probably going to be someone of big stature, a strong person. And again, I'm going to say this. I said it before. I'm going to say it again. I believe that either the house was specifically targeted, or perhaps more of the victims, one or more of the victims was also specifically targeted. I think that's my opinion, my professional opinion, based on the information that's already been reported in the public. I don't think that a perpetrator stuck a pin in a map and said, I'm going to go to this location and kill 4 people. I doubt that very highly.
I happen to agree with you, Phil. And the other thing is this weapon, it's been covered by all kinds of experts, weapon experts, behavioral analysis folks from the FBI. And everyone agrees that it's a substantial size knife. Many tried to point out that it's possibly a K-bar knife that's used by the Marines in the Marine Corps, or a knife that type, because of the large wounds that it caused in these bodies. So when people say, oh, how do they know it was, two things that does. A, it shows that it was premeditated, because the person that did this had to bring that knife with him with the intention of doing what he did, right? And it shows that he has some type of skill with this type of knife. Mike.
Yeah, I agree. The lacerations on the chest area, maybe the throat, are going to indicate very quickly, the size of the blade and the puncture marks in the chest, and that leads us to believe that pretty much, it's going to be a 99% chance it's a young man, and I'm thinking probably a person from that area, from the surrounding area. If not Moscow itself, there's definitely the surrounding area.
This is the father of one of the victims.
I'm trying to figure this out, and it really means a lot.
A father of one of the victims speaks out. A former tenant talks about the crime scene, and online sleuths target an ex-boyfriend. We delve into the University of Idaho murder investigation. Former homicide detective Phil. Welcome. Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Another week, another day, and still no arrests, no publicly identifiable suspect, and no recovered murder weapon in the University of Idaho quadruple murder case. This is the killings of 21-year-old Kaylee Gonsalves, 21-year-old Madison Mogan, 20-year-old Zana Kernodle, and 20-year-old Ethan Chapin. Their bodies were found in their rental home on November 13th, and there's still so many questions that we have. Now, while we don't know what is happening behind the scenes with law enforcement and investigators, what we can discuss is what's happening publicly, because we do have some updates to go through. And to help me talk through this and get the latest in the investigation about where we're at, I'm joined once again by Phil Waters, who has been with us the last few weeks to go over this case. Phil is a former legendary homicide detective who has worked over 400 cases and interrogator. Phil, it's great to have you once again back here on Sidebar.
Good morning, Jesse. I appreciate y'all having me back.
Yeah, of course. And I want to start with right now, Ben Mogan. So Ben Mogan, father of Madison Mogan, out previously. I could be mistaken, but this is, he spoke to a local media outlet, and he said, while there are still so many questions that haven't been answered in this case, he believes the killer or killers will be caught. So this is kind of a different sense of what we've been seeing online and from the community, where there's this seeming lack of trust in law enforcement. He has said, quote, "From the very beginning, I've known that people don't get away with these things these days. There's too many things that you can get caught up on, like DNA and videos everywhere. This isn't something that people get away with. That goes unsolved." He also said, that how state investigators have been getting kind of outside help from the FBI. And he said that with these resources, they should be able to solve the case. He said, quote, "I have to just know that they know what they're doing. And if they don't, then they're going to know someone that does." What do you make of his statements? Do you agree with him?
Well, to a degree, I do. And I'm, of course, heartfelt prayers have been going up for him and the other family members of these young people that, the tragic event. I do agree with him in the sense that there are a lot now to technological standpoint that has brought the conclusion to cases brought about in a more timely way. Now, I use that word timely loosely because it may take the timely manner in this case. It may be 2 months, it may be 2 years, and it could go on from there. The statement that he makes about people just get away with this kind of thing in today's world, that is true to a degree. But again, this is when it comes down to it can be good action detective work that gets this thing solved, and that's hitting bricks, getting out there, talking to people, processing it and collected, and then seeing where that evidence leads. So I think there's a better chance that something like this, especially this particular crime, will be resolved.
So we had said that earlier on also, that we definitely felt that this case is going to be solved, but it's the timeliness of it that we're not sure of. Eliza Krogan, thank you for the $10 super sticker, much appreciated. Patty Banks, thank you for the $1.99 super sticker. And question, does law enforcement also have to give their DNA? They don't have to, but they may take DNA from law enforcement in this case as elimination DNA, in case their DNA got inside that house, and they might ask them to do a exemplar swab to eliminate their DNA from the house. Mike.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head earlier when you were talking about DNA, and you said, you could have a house that's full of, fingerprints. You could have hair fibers, things like that, but you can't explain away you could explain that away, but you can't explain away how your blood got there. So, and you had mentioned that earlier, that if there is DNA in the form of blood from the killer, that's something that a suspect could not explain away, like they could explain away, well, I was there 3 weeks earlier at a party and a piece of my hair fell out. Totally different. There's different kinds of DNA, and some is explainable and some isn't.
Absolutely. Phil?
I want to answer one of the questions that was put to Mike Giacalone. The person that was questioning him asked him, what are you concerned about? What I'm concerned about is this. Number one, the FBI profilers have been there since almost day one. Why haven't they put out some type of a profile of who they think, even if it's general, or maybe a 10 or 15 year stretch on the age of the perpetrator, the race of the perpetrator? There should be a profile out. Now, they don't seem to have put out anything regarding a suspect to look out for, a male white, a male black, whatever it is. So they don't have that, it seems like. And the third thing is no reward. I would think that there would have been a reward put up early on in this. It's 7 weeks. The family should get together and come up with the money if law enforcement doesn't want to do it, and put out a reward. Money opens doors in cases like this, and something that was suspicious that someone may have showed up at work with a cut hand or something like that, that might be the key to the puzzle. Those are the things that concern me, not what lack of evidence is being put forth to the media. Those are the things that concern me.
Dr. Michael Baden appeared on Fox a day or two ago, and I want to just play a little bit of what he had to say about this case.
High-profile crime and murder Dr. Michael Baden is a forensic pathologist and Fox News contributor, and joins me to break down some of the most talked about cases. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
It's one that is on a lot of people's. Start with the latest, the unsolved murder mystery of those 4 beautiful University of Idaho students. And we do have new body camera video from the police department there. It shows officers responding to a noise complaint. Students were murdered, and spoke to victim Madison Mogan back in September. Take a look.
This is the video we were referring to, that this was earlier on, that showed there was just a huge party at the house, and not attended by the people that live there.
All right, Madison. So here's the deal. Okay, they've already said that in here lives like none of the students that live at this address are here right now. A noise complaint. We want that music turned down, and we don't want to come back again tonight.
No, you did. I'm just frustrated. I'm so sorry once again.
Does that have anything possibly the case whatsoever? And what are your top line thoughts on this?
Well, it's now 6 since the deaths occurred, and there's less and less information being given out by the police, and there's an issue raised that have been tracking the matter as to whether anything, or they do have a lot of information that isn't being released. And I think there was an issue way back at the beginning that a neighbor heard a sound or a scream around the time of the murder. The murder occurred, but that's never been flushed out as whether or not it actually pertains to what happened about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning 6 weeks ago. I think the evidence thus far would indicate that whoever went into the residence and killed the 4 people, stabbed them with the same, knew the place, knew how to go up to the 3rd floor first. Appears to be the girls the target and would have known the person. Then he went downstairs and had taken up the 2 people on the 2nd floor, stabbed them to death. The 2 people on the 1st floor, which is away from were not touched and didn't hear anything. So right now, it's unsolved murders and real fear.
And Dr. Bodden, the families are understandably frustrated, and they want answers. Just quickly here, are you concerned that this could turn into a case?
More than 50 now in the United States, we don't get this from the television shows, become cold cases,
Right.
don't get solved. That has to be kept in mind.
Unbelievable statistic
But
there.
That's sort of a scary statistic that most people don't know, that now nationally only 50% of all murders are solved, meaning that 50% go unsolved. One good thing to add to that, though, is that there is no statute of limitations to murder, and someone could be arrested for a murder 30 years from now and convicted of it. But that's not a statistic that makes us feel good. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, that's not a good batting average when it comes to investigating murders and trying to get justice for the victims. But Bodden is a great medical investigator, and he had some great comments over the course of the last 7 weeks on this case. And he pointed out about the impact of the blade from on the victim's bodies, that it made a mark, which there was some type of guard. That's how they got to what they believe is that hunting knife. So again, he's really experienced. He's been around. He was the chief medical examiner in New York for a number of years. So
Yes.
I like his comment.
One of the things he said that I don't know if people caught it, and I never heard anyone say that before, and I don't think he's correct either, is he said that the killer went up to the 3rd floor first.
Yeah,
Killed the 2 girls and then came down. That's the first time I've ever heard that.
Right.
It's believed that the killer killed the 2 people on the 2nd floor first and then went up to the 3rd floor. That's how it's been reported to me. Did anyone hear any differently? This is the first time I ever heard it reported like this.
Yeah, it was the thought was that they came into the back door, which leads you into the 2nd floor.
Right.
And
right.
then you can't actually get into the 3rd floor balcony, the little balcony area, unless you maybe like climbed a tree. There was maybe an overhanging branch. But it was always thought that the 2 girls on the 2nd floor were the ones
It was actually Ethan Chapin.
I'm sorry, Ethan Chapin and his girlfriend.
Zana Knodel were on the 2nd floor,
Right.
and that they were killed first, and then he went up to the 3rd floor.
That would logically.
Right. So this is the first time I've heard this.
Yeah, but I don't think it was ever really determined publicly by law enforcement killed first. Maybe he has an inside track on that, inside knowledge, and we really don't know 100% that the perpetrator entered from the 2nd floor level. That's the most likely position that I think. But however, there is a sliding door on the 3rd floor with that little deck. There was a ladder on the side of the building. We don't know what the exact entry point was. It's either going to be the 2nd or the 3rd floor rear of that location. I don't know. He kind of said it to me. That caught my attention too, Billy, almost like he knew it, that the people on the 3rd floor were killed first. And I believe that would be Mogan and Goncalves.
Gonsalves. Yeah, I don't believe.
Gonsalves.
I don't believe he's right. I think he just.
But they were on the 3rd floor. That we've determined,
yes,
correct?
Yes. Ethan Chapin and Zana Knodel were on the 2nd floor. So I'm not.
Okay.
Let me just play a little bit.
That's
of this.
yet to be determined.
How college students were brutally murdered in their apartment, and the horrific crime certainly community on edge. Police urging anyone with information to contact authorities. Still, there are no suspects. News Nation's Nancy Liu joining us now from Moscow. And Nancy, what is the mood in the town almost 2 months later?
Well, Natasha, locals tell me that it's definitely a different vibe around town with a national spotlight on it because of a quadruple murder. Amid the anxiety over the search for a killer, residents are hopeful that there will eventually be a return to a new normal. Even on a gray day, Moscow, Idaho is picturesque, and there's a strong sense of pride in this college town of about 25,000.
I think it's a great community, super small. I love walking down. Every time I walk down the street, I see someone I know, and I love that.
But along Main Street, reminders of a murder mystery that remains unsolved. The weathered memorial outside the restaurant where two of the victims worked makes it clear it's been quite some time since the stabbing deaths on November 13th.
Still very sad, scary. We're still locking our doors, which is new. Never did before.
Almost every business is displaying this poster, a plea for tips and information about the killings of Kaylee Gonsalves, Maddie Mogan, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle. In their latest update, Moscow police said they believe someone has information that will add context to what happened the night of the murders. Investigators continue to seek pictures or video that may, along with information, white Hyundai Elantra spotted murder scene. Some residents are understanding that police have yet to make an arrest.
I bet it's pretty standard for what's happened. Law enforcement is doing their best, and I hope praying that they find the for sure.
On Banfield, a Moscow resident place shooting back in 2015, also expressing community confidence.
We're a small community. We are a safe community for everyone. That's why I moved here. And I thought I was bringing my family to a safer place, and I still believe that.
Town remains fairly quiet with Idaho students still on winter break. In its latest release, the Moscow Police Department also thanked the community for its continued support and patience, and also understanding that only very limited information can be shared. Natasha.
Yeah, such a terrible situation for that community, and it just keeps going. Nancy Liu, live for us in Moscow, Idaho. Thank you.
Thank you for watching.
So, folks, you could see that said it all. The woman that came on the screen and said, we don't even lock our doors in Moscow. And then she said, well, we do now, and it's overnight. This has changed a community from being probably one of the safest communities in the country. And it probably still is safe, but except there's a killer out there, and it's changed people's lives. And this little safe community that is dwarfed by the University of Idaho. I think 2,000 people from the community work at the university. So it's a thriving part of that community. And the unrest that this has caused, I don't think you can estimate this.
Absolutely, Billy. I think it's a shame that people that lived in a community that didn't have to lock doors are now concerned and afraid. And like you said, there's a killer amongst that community or somewhere close to that community. And until an arrest is made, I think that these people are going to be on guard, and they should be. And I'm just glad to see that those posters are around the neighborhood, around the town. Maybe it'll jog someone's memory to think back and maybe, drop a dime on someone that was acting unusual or acting suspicious, or perhaps had, we talked about the wounds on the hands, maybe disappeared for a few days after the murder, didn't show up at work or whatever. All of those things are very, very important to keep out there in the media, keep out there in that town. Hopefully something will jog in someone's memory, and they'll come up with the key piece of the puzzle that'll put the whole thing together.
Mike?
Yeah, this is a landmark case. As you and Phil know, you talk about in New York City, there's a few landmark cases that stand out in people's minds for generations. I was just thinking a few minutes ago about the Kitty Genovese case from 1964. That's something people always talk about still to this day. And, and the gentleman who was killed after watching the U.S. Open Bill, you had mentioned?
Brian Watkins.
Right.
Brian
There's
Watkins.
certain cases, and this is that kind of case. There's going to be a before and after effect in this town, and it's sad, and they have to live with this. And I think the people that put a lot of information out there on the internet sleuths, do a disservice to the people to make a terrible situation even worse.
Absolutely. Phil?
Joe Murray, attorney at law. Have you found yourself in a jam? Are you in need of legal counsel in the New York area? Do you need a victim's advocate? Well, Joe Murray is your man. He's not only an experienced trial attorney, he's also a retired 15-year member of the NYPD. He literally knows both sides of the fence. His website is jmurray-law.com. His telephone number is 646-838-1702, or you can email Joe at jmurray-law.com. Joe is a big supporter of Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories and a tremendous, excellent trial attorney.
So, folks, we started tonight's show with the fact that there's no suspects, but it was sort of put out there that that potentially the Moscow police have a suspect. And I don't believe that's true. On Law and Crime, our compadre Joe Giacalone, retired NYPD sergeant, had spoke about it in his opinion in regards to this. But we don't think that at this point that there is there is.
However, once a record is
suspect.
released, we can verify its authenticity, as we do not know if anything has been altered. Detectives are aware of videos distributed by local businesses. What does that mean?
It's quite unfortunate. We've seen at least one video released in its entirety.
What did you say to Adam? I told him.
Where we had basically, really was interesting is that it was recording audio. Now, you'd have to ask a lawyer about this. But, from as far as I was concerned, you can't record audio unless you're part of the conversation. So to me, that was an interesting thing. So everybody who was walking by, we heard, so that was where the whole thing about Adam, I think, or something, some substance like that, where they were talking about the girls were walking down, and of course, we jumped on that. So that was an unfortunate release, and we now saw, I think, a still photo of something inside the bar.
Yeah, let me address that real quick. So there are reporters. This new could be Gonsalves inside a bar at 1 a.m. the night of the murders. It's an image apparently from a surveillance video. Again, it hasn't been authenticated. Now, remember, it's believed that they got home close to, I think, 2 a.m. and we believe that the killings happened between 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. Yeah, talk to me what you make of that image that's circulating online.
So yeah, so we have another release. Now this is actually probably some of the worst things that you could see what could happen in this situation, where we have either businesses who are sharing this with true crime people and they're putting it out on media or on YouTube or what have you. This doesn't help the investigation, right? This actually only now compounds issues. And we see the police department do this a number of times, filtering out things specifically from the public, right? And that's not even the media or the press. This is, we don't have, journalists and reporters asking for this stuff. We have people from all over the country. And, here's the other thing, and not really many people are talking about. They've had over, I think they said 10,000 tips. Right, that's kind of unheard of, which means to me that most of the tips that they're getting have little to no value, but the police department has to go through each and every one of these things. They have to be answered out somehow. So these are then time consuming. And you saw the FBI adding, I think it was 10 agents. If we're chasing down leads that have nothing to do with it, and then complain that this is taking too long, I think we could kind of figure out exactly where the problem actually is. We don't want to turn people off, and they specifically said kind of that kind of cop talk in there too, that even if you think it's not important, send it to us anyway. So yeah, they don't want to prevent somebody who knows something from doing it. But here's again, I mean, they're dealing with an enormous.
So I mean, I agree with him with the tips, because they have to check out every single tip, and getting 10, I think they got 10,000 like phone tips, and then another 2 or 3,000 text tips and email type tips. So it has to be checked out and closed out in some way. But Phil, you mentioned earlier, why was there no reward? And I feel that a reward, it ups the level of tips, meaning that the tips are more truthful when there's money involved for some reason. A lot of people that are giving tips, I would say in most cases, 60 to 70% of the tips are just pure garbage. And like someone knows nothing, but just is calling the police department because they can, and compared to what is an actually a good tip.
Billy, just quick, a case that I was involved in a number of years back, a video was put out of a perpetrator on 4th of July. On 4th of July, naturally, people called up, this guy's the person that did it. The neighbor was shooting fireworks off, so they wanted to, bring the police to his door to get him to stop shooting the fireworks. But then on the 5th, when a reward was put out of a high number, $50,000, within hours, 2 calls were made identifying the perpetrator of the case. I know that it will generate more tips. You're right about that, Billy. But you know what? At this point, it's so far into the investigation, they should have had a reward right away. Again, I still call for that. And I call for, the parents, the families getting together and forming a coalition, staying on the same page with law enforcement. It seems like Mr. Gonsalves has now, he's in the camp of the police again. It seemed like he was out for a little bit, but it seems like he's in. And Mr. Mogan is saying that he's got faith in the police. Let's all be on the same page with this thing. That's important for this investigation.
But I'm thinking though, we started this episode out with the fact that Joe Giacalone and the Law and Crime Network thought that there was about to be a breakthrough in this case. And I'm not seeing that at this juncture. And I just wanted to sum it up because that's the whole premise of this show. Do we think that there is going to be a breakthrough soon? Professor Mike?
Well, the breakthrough would have to be some sort of, DNA evidence, blood evidence, connected to geofencing, as Phil talked about, getting a particular suspect DNA and in a form of blood at that location. And then, as Phil pointed out, and then pinning them down to a specific time period where their phone was on in the area. That would be a tremendous break, but that's how the form it's going to take. And but as you guys know, analyzing that, putting it all together, it's going to take a while. And this is, as retired Sergeant Giacalone said, you could see this going more months. That's just the reality.
No, absolutely. None of this stuff happens quickly unless there's some, I use the term smoking gun piece of evidence early on that points directly to someone. But all of the evidence, the scientific evidence that we're talking about, the DNA, the blood, the hair, the fibers, the geofencing, the cell phone information, all the physical evidence looking for the vehicle, that white Hyundai Elantra that is not been identified, the murder weapon, which has never been recovered, all of those things, the potential DNA that could be, that we don't know because the medical examiner's report has never been released yet either. Could there have been DNA underneath the fingernails of the deceased, that because they fought back and they got some of the perpetrator's DNA underneath their fingernails or on their skin, or touch DNA? All of that stuff takes time. And right now it is within the time frame where a lot of the evidence should be back. And we spoke about that before. We still don't have the toxicology back, which is usually a 6 to 8 week affair anyway. So that's also within the time frame. Phil?
Billy, I just want to make a point about what Mike just said. If the case does go on for months, it's not such a bad thing, so to speak, because as time goes on, like you guys just pointed out, the DNA evidence comes back, the toxicology comes back, the geofencing information comes back. Now, maybe down the line, we get a lead on a person that we think is a person of interest or a suspect. So now we're going to look into that person's, work records. Were they at work the days after this particular incident took place? All of those things will be all the ammunition that I would have ready if I get somebody in the box, whether it be tomorrow or 6 months from now, that I could say, well, I'm going to put holes in their story. I'm going to let them tell their story, ask them some questions, and then I'm going to have all this other information, whether it be cell phone evidence, DNA evidence, touch DNA, hair fibers, whatever it is, the vehicle in question that this person may have gotten rid of the vehicle, sold the vehicle, whatever. All of those things are going to be in the toolbox, so to speak, when we do come up with a suspect.
Absolutely. Tom Cusinelli, again, thanks for the $9.99 super chat. I'm seeing a lot of new names in the chat. I'm glad to see a lot of folks joining the Police Off the Cuff family. If you're not subscribed to us, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and ring that bell. I just, we sort of came on the air tonight because there seemed to be what information out there, like almost like there was a breakthrough. And I'm not seeing it right now. I'm not seeing this as a breakthrough. I would love to be on the air when there is a breakthrough, when there's real information that they have a suspect. That would be thrilling to be able to report that. I don't think they're at that right now. I don't think they're at that phase, but we can definitely see that happening. I said early on that I really do believe that this case is going to be solved, and it's going to be science that helps solve this case. Professor Mike.
Yeah, science will put the finishing touch on it. But as Phil said, it's going to take getting a person, a suspect named, bringing them in, pinning them down with logic and letting them speak, let them tell their lie, and then, playing your cards, boxing them in 7 ways to Sunday so they can't escape. So the finishing touch will be DNA. The hard work is going to be, it's still out there. There's still a lot of hard work to do because you still have a lot of suspects that you still have not interviewed.
100%. Phil, final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Listen, this case is complicated. It's obviously going on for a period of time here. We're about 7 weeks in. I have faith in the law enforcement officers. I think it is going to be solved. It's going to be exactly what Mike and Bill and I have said. It's going to be the evidence that was collected that's going to tie the perpetrator in. That's going to be the finishing touches on whoever the perpetrator may be. I'll say one other thing that I said earlier. I do believe that it's weapon specific and victim specific, that they were targeted, either the house or the victims. That's going to be an important part of this investigation. I don't think random, pin in the map and saying, let me go kill 4 people. I just want to repeat that. Happy New Year to everybody that's listening, all our subscribers, all our fans. We love you guys. Stay with us. God bless, and stay safe.
Mike, final words.
Yeah. Just patience and pray for the family, and just pray for the officers that are working nonstop. This is something that's a matter of pride for them, and they have a sworn duty to the victims, and they're going to carry out their duty as best they can.
100%. Folks, to all the families of the victims, we pray for you guys. We pray for that there'll be a speedy arrest in this case, but mostly for how you're feeling and how you're getting on during this holiday season. Folks, have a safe night. God bless, and have a happy New Year.
Stay safe, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
One episode just ain't enough.